Hello and welcome to another episode of Is It Broke? Is It Fixable? Or Just Plain Durable? Today we're going to talk about cylinders. Cylinders were one of the earliest commercial formats for home listening, though the earliest recordings we know of were made with glass and smoke. You could actually see the voice waves in the smoke between the glass panes. Cylinders were originally known as records, but that later fell to the flat discs. They were invented in 1877 by Edison and his team. The first ones used tin foil, which wasn't very applicable for mass production for listening for people. That's where wax came in. Alexander Graham Bell and his cousin Chichester made improvements creating a wax cylinder. Another person who also made improvements to the cylinder and made the best recordings via cylinder was Gianni Bettini, using his micro recorder and reproducer. There aren't many of his recordings left because, due to the fact that they were very high quality, most of them were expensive and most people could only afford the 50-cent Edison or Columbia cylinders. On an interesting side note, Bettini, being an inventor, also invented a lift arm lighter. Bell's company made cylinders under the name graphophone, and Edison, once seeing that what Bell had done, started revisiting the cylinder format and made Edison cylinders. Cylinders only held 2 to 4 minutes of material, usually music or a comedy monologue. In the 1890s, Emil Berliner introduced the flat disc lateral cut record, causing a format war. His original discs were made of rubber though, so they were only good for so many plays before being worn out. In 1902, Edison figured out how to make a master copy and reproduce many cylinders from that. Before, they had to recreate every single cylinder. There were opponents to recording on cylinders or just in general, including John Philip Sousa and Mark Twain, saying live was much better than canned music. By 1910, disc phonographs had won the format war. The last cylinders were produced around 1929. Imagine in a different time, in a different place, listening to Abbey Road in cylinder format. Efforts are now being made to preserve these early recordings digitally. Without this start in technology in recording, would anything audio be what it was, or is, or has evolved into today? I highly suggest reading The Fabulous Phonograph by Ronald Gillette. It is, the facts in there will tell you anything and everything you never, ever, and absolutely want to know about the phonograph. So, here we have our Edison Amberola cylinder player. That was the very last model cylinder player made. And here we have an example of the flat disc player in its early stages. Now, your Edison player phonographs, there were 2 types of cylinders. There was the brown wax cylinder, which I do not have an example of. And then there was the black wax cylinder. They look like this. Though these are not completely made of wax, tried melting one down once and it turned into what looked like tar. They are also very brittle, so you have to be very careful with them because they break very easily. The brown wax ones you cannot play on this model. You need the special reproducer on the earlier Edison cylinder players. On an interesting side note, the horn used on this phonograph was originally actually used for a cylinder player. That's why it has this chain and hook. Originally, this pipe came back like this far and would go into the reproducer, and then they had a rod that came up off of the cylinder player and connected to this to hold the horn. When we put it on here, we can kind of see that because this is just a chintzy aftermarket elbow. Watch what happens when we do that. Foop. Try leaving that sit around all the time in your living room and see what happens at around 2 o'clock in the morning. You can, however, play the black cylinders on this model, but you would not want to continually play them on there because it actually shaves the cylinder every time it plays it. After the brown and black cylinders, they had the blue amberol cylinders. These cylinders are made of celluloid, so they will not actually break like the wax ones. They actually have, some of them actually have a different core inside that almost looks like ceramic. This one doesn't. The sound quality, especially on the blue amberols, it's amazing how decent it actually sounds. There were other companies besides Edison and Columbia that made cylinders. Here's our Columbia cylinder. But there were, like I said, other companies like this one, the Indestructible Phonograph Record, made by the Indestructible Phonograph Record Company in Albany, New York. And then here's another example. Oxford Records are good records. This is a 2-minute Oxford Records cylinder. And now we'll give you a demonstration of these. You always want to make sure that you have the player cranked up. It basically uses a clock spring kind of setup. So you're winding the clock spring up to run. Then we flick this little lever, move this in, and turn that down.
I'm a long way from home, and my thoughts ever roam to an airy fowl of the sea. Wild roses bloom round the door.
So that's a blue amberol cylinder. And as you can see on this model, it actually has that white material on the inside I was talking about. Now we'll play the Indestructible record. Oh, it actually has a little note inside of it. Oh, this is a classic. Silver threads among the gold. There we go. You hear it skipping there. That's because I need to put some sewing machine oil on this bar here. But that also can mean that you have like dirt or destructions or scratches on the cylinder. And now we will play the Oxford cylinder. This is a comedic monologue. Jim Lawson. This is going to be a hoot. If it cooperates.
Well, Sir Jim Lawson was calculated to be the best horse trader and the best horse. One from the center, yes, sir. They could cut up on the fence, start a backer and whittle a stick and swap the backer and whittle a stick and swap you out of your eyes. But a fella come along and your eyes.
Well, it's not going to cooperate, but you will find that the gentleman who does Jim Lawson's or Uncle Josh's country monologues, his name was Cal Stewart, and some of his monologues are very funny. You can see here, you see the particles? That was the player actually shaving the cylinder. Because if I wipe it, it looks good again. Alexander Graham Bell's graphophone became Columbia. See here it says the graphophone and Columbia Records. This here is a wax cylinder. Oh, I forgot about that.
Kentucky Patrol, played by the American Symphony Orchestra, Edison Wax
You can hear the difference in the quality there since this is a wax cylinder. It would help if it had the other reproducer of the older model, probably. Did you notice there at the beginning, Edison actually used to do an introduction on some of the recordings? Well, from all of us here at the Inn of the Purple Doors, thanks for watching and good luck.